Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Etiquette Show. We have an amazing guest today, Dr. Loeb, to talk about the very important phenomena that has been much talked about in the news, which is the 3I/Atlas. And Dr. Loeb, I'll introduce our illustrious guest today. Dr. Avi Loeb is the Frank B. Baird Jr. Professor of Science at Harvard University and a best-selling author in lists of the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Publishers Weekly, Die Zeit, Der Spiegel, L'Express, and more. He received a PhD in physics from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem in Israel at the age of 24, 1980 to 86. Led the first international project supported by the Strategic Defense Initiative, 1983 to 1988, and was subsequently a long-term member of the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton, 1988 to 1993. Loeb has written 9 books, including most recently Extraterrestrial and Interstellar, and as well as over 1,000 scientific papers with H-index of 132 and I-10-index of 622 on a wide range of topics, including black holes, the first stars, the search for extraterrestrial life, and the future of the universe. Loeb is the director of the Institute for Theory and Computation, 2007 to the present, within the Harvard-Smithsonian Center of Astrophysics, and also serves as the head of the Galileo Project, 2021 to the present. He has been the longest serving chair of Harvard's Department of Astronomy, 2011 to 2020, and the founding director of Harvard's Black Hole Initiative, 2016 to 2021. He is an elected fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Science, the American Physical Society, and the International Academy of Astronautics. Loeb is a former member of the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, PCAST, and the White House, a former chair of the Board of Physics and Astronomy of the National Academies, 2018 to 2021, and a current member of the advisory board of the Einstein Visualize the Impossible of the Hebrew University. He chaired the advisory committee for the Breakthrough Starshot Initiative, 2015 to 2024, and served as the science theory director for all initiatives and of the Breakthrough Prize Foundation. In 2012, Time magazine selected Loeb as one of the 25 most influential people in space, and in 2020, Loeb was selected among the 14 most inspiring Israelis of the last decade. In 2024, Loeb was ranked number 3 in publication record and impact of research among all astronomers worldwide over the past 5 years by Scholars GPS. Loeb's latest TED Talk was among the top 5 most popular TED Talks in 2024. So welcome, Dr. Loeb, to our show. We're very much grateful that you could be with us, such an illustrious astrophysicist, to talk about the critical developments of the 3I Atlas. But before we sort of get into sort of the latest update of 3I/Atlas, what is the sort of one of the sort of the interviews which you previously had to this show, which was very intriguing to me, is when you made the sort of the prophetic comment that we shouldn't have really, politics should not be getting into sort of the whole context of discovery in terms of alien life and all that sort of stuff that people, there's been much debate about, particularly with the incoming of the 3I Atlas. To me, that's very sort of prophetic. And I was wondering if you wanted to sort of elaborate on your sort of those previous comments you made about politics not getting in the way of things.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. We could have saved a lot of time if you just referred to me as a curious farmer. I was born on a farm. I see science as a privilege of staying curious. When we grow to become adults, we are often told that you should behave like the adult in the room. You shouldn't ask too many questions. You shouldn't be cute. You shouldn't take risks because you would lose your reputation. And that's very bad. It's bad for innovation. It's bad done about the world. We start our life with very little knowledge. We had a century of science and technology, and look what we found. Like the two of us are speaking the development in science and technology, but we still know very little, and we should be modest and sense of humility. The other thing that you brought up is that we shouldn't use politics into science because experience about the universe. Politics is more about pretending to know the truth and telling other people what you believe is the truth. That is not supposed to be the approach of science, because in science, we make mistakes, learn by paying attention to nature. It's not about us. Right? So just to give you an example, the Vatican insisted that the Earth is at the center of the universe. About 400 years ago, they put Galileo Galilei in house arrest just because he said something different. He said, well, I look through my telescope and I see some moons around Jupiter. That means that not everything is revolving around the Earth. That was his reasoning. It makes a lot of sense. But the chink like that, and they didn't want the public that. And only 350 years after he died, they announced that he was right. That was in 1992. And that's where humans visited the moon. We saw the Earth moving around the sun from a distance. So it was a bit foolish for the Vatican to in the Earth is at the center of the universe. But what I'm trying to, they tried to make a political statement that they would save their stature. They were telling their believers that the Earth is at the center, and here comes Galileo and says something different, and they were really about it. But the correct approach would have been, forget about politics. We build a better telescope than Galileo. The church had a lot of money, much more than Galileo, and prove him wrong. That would be the right approach. And then if they were to build a telescope bigger than he has and look at Jupiter, they would realize that he's, and they would not get into this fiasco of public relations where they admitted that they were wrong 350 years after he died. Okay, so now how does it translate to present day? Everyone thinks, oh, now is not being touched by politics. That's not true. That's completely not true. There are political narratives that enter the practice of science. Some of them come from political arena. People that have clear views on politics, they try to enforce them in the context of science. But there is a worse thing that is happening, that scientists pretend to be the adults in the room. They rely on past knowledge. Basically, they maintain their stature. They don't take risks. They are not willing to consider seriously things that deviate from what they thought. And we call those anomalies. When something anomalous up, they just brush it under the carpet of traditional thinking, and they resist alternatives. And this is dangerous, because I'll give you an example. When I astrophysics, it was 40 years ago, and back then we already knew that most of the matter of the universe is some substance that we don't know. It's called dark because it's invisible. We can't. And so what is it? And what kind of particles it's made of? So when I started astrophysics, it was popular and within the mainstream to say, oh, this is the lightest particle, the least massive particle of some new symmetry of nature, which is called supersymmetry. And everyone said, it looks very plausible. People got honors, awards. It was part of the mainstream. We put $10 into the Large Hadron Collider, which is an accelerator at CERN in Europe, and didn't find supersymmetry. It was not there in the natural parameter space. So just shows you it's a learning experience. The mainstream view for 40 years was wrong. Even though everyone said that must be right, it turned out to be. So it should teach us humility. I'm not saying the $10 should not have been invested. I'm just saying you should be aware of the fact that whatever mainstream says if it's not proven by evidence, data, it might be wrong. Okay. The fact that a lot of people say that is not a guarantee to it being right. A lot of people believe the church, it was not right. One person said something different, put in our house already. The way science should be is, you don't want to put all people in one herd and keep it very tight. You don't want everyone to do the same thing, because no, if everyone goes in the same path, it might lead in the wrong direction. You may put money into that path and you will get nowhere, just like with supersymmetry. However, if you allow other people to other possibilities, then you have a better chance of finding the truth. And introducing politics into science, or introducing groupthink into science, which is politics, because this is called scientific politics, when a group of people decides to enforce what they think on everyone else, even though they have no evidence to support it. And that is political, because it's just based on interactions among people. But nature, is under no obligation to make us, to satisfy our wishes. The Earth went around the sun for 4.5 billion years. 4.5 billion times it went around the sun before the Vatican even existed. So the fact that people something that is completely wrong about nature, saying that the sun moves around the Earth, whereas actually the Earth moves around the sun, it doesn't matter for nature. We can be completely wrong. Nature doesn't care about it. Our duty to figure it out, and the only way we can do it is not by insisting on what we said in the past, which is a political approach. It's about listening to, learning from it, and being sufficiently humble to recognize that sometimes we are wrong.
Yeah. With that note, Dr. Loeb, it's prophetic also that you mentioned Galileo, because I believe many of us, as people, humans, regard Galileo as lifting the veil of ignorance, and your team, in the same spirit, is also lifting the veil of ignorance with respect to astrophysics and with respect to the search for alien life. So I think that you're doing a tremendous job as a beacon of light in an environment where there's a lot of static electricity that people are, somewhat confused about. So with that said, again, with respect to the search for alien life, I just wanted to sort of get your sort of take on, because what I did, Dr. Loeb, was that, with respect to, and this is the reason which I definitely wanted to reach out to you, Dr. Loeb, is that there seems to be all kinds of information being put out by 3i Atlas, contradictory information. I'm not speaking about the tremendous work that you're doing, but just in general, in terms of the YouTube, what I did was that I broke down perhaps various groups that are sort of taking a sort of a different take on 3i Atlas. And I just wanted to get your insight, because in the search for alien life, for example, I broke down about 6 different groups. There's that group that's interpreting 3i Atlas from the perspective of, that there were ancient aliens in human history. That's one group. There's another particular group which I broke down, which are the people who are associated with alleged alien contactees, whistleblowers. There's also, for example, that group also include a former Canadian Defense Minister who passed away some years ago, Dr. Paul Halier, which is alleged that that humans were in contact with 2 to 12 extraterrestrial groups. There's one recent testimony by Mr. Grush, associated with the United States Air Force, former USAF intelligence officer, which alleges to have been in contact with what he calls human non-biologics. Then there's another group which talks about, which in my view is people on the internet, which are just, for lack of a better word, a little bit self-serving. They're just looking clickbait. They're saying all kinds of things which may or may not be true. Maybe they're whistleblowers. It's hard to figure out what the truth or fiction from what they're saying. Then there's an alleged what I call a disinformation group, which Mr. Grush alludes to, people which are just simply trying to either whitewash the tremendous work that you do with respect to the search for alien life. Their idea is to just cover up and they're sort of in the realm of a political agenda. Then there's another group which refers to themselves as exopolitics, that alleges that not only have there been contact with humans but they're actually influencing the government. So we have all these kind of and among the scientists, there are those scientists which completely look at all your great data that you've been providing and says, oh no, there's nothing, just a regular comet, there's nothing strange going on there. And then there are scientists like yourself which are being open-minded and saying, yeah, there could be a 40% chance that there's some sort of alien technology here. So what is your sort of, in terms of from the layperson people, because my background is I have a bit of a law background, and as people who are in law, we have a certain evidentiary burden that we use. For example, that if you bring in like 5 or 6 witnesses to a crime scene, then the judge decides whether there's credibility or not, and then the judge may decide based upon witnesses without any video. Oh yeah, there is credibility that something did take place, that you were burglarized by this individual. So what is the evidentiary burden, if there's any, in science for determining whether there's in fact alien contact or not? Like, what is your insight in terms of the evidentiary burden? How does that apply to 3i Atlas in terms of these discrepancies that are taking place online?
Yeah, actually, as it happens, I discuss this in my class. I'm teaching a mandatory class for the PhD students in our department. And I explained, first of all, that the law of physics are very different than the legal system in the sense that no atom, no electron in the universe can violate the laws of physics. All atoms behave according to the same laws. That's very different from human society, where every person can break the law. And another thing that makes it different is that we use instruments to decide what this is similar to the approach of FIFA, the World Soccer Organization. You know, when there is a disputed goal, if it's unclear commercial goal, FIFA doesn't go around the goalkeeper. What do you think? Was there a goal? Or ask some witnesses, the way the legal system does. FIFA cameras to figure out what really happened. So that's of science. And science should be driven just by evidence collected by instruments, because people tell stories that many of which, are not reliable. We know that from a car accident, different witnesses would give you very different of what really happened. And the legal system has no choice but to rely on what they say. However, in physics, the reality, the physical reality, we rely on instruments and data that is quantitative. Now, how can you tell the difference between a rock and a spacecraft? It's very easy. If you have a close-up photograph, you can immediately tell, because the spacecraft would have screws and bolts and it would look like a very different from a rock. Okay. Now, if the object is very far away and it appears at a point in our image, we won't be able to tell what it is. And then what we need to rely on is how the object is moving. So for example, if it maneuvers, it means that it has some propulsion. Or if it transmits some artificial light that is a reflection of sunlight from a rock. Or broadcasts some signal that we are able to understand as being intelligent. So there are ways of telling the difference. You need to collect enough data, and when there is, it will be just like the experience of Galileo. It wouldn't be possible for anyone to deny it. It would be clear that if in the sky is maneuvering in ways that we cannot explain, it must be technologically manufactured. And actually, 2 months ago, I defined a scale which the rank 0 applies to a purely natural object like an asteroid or a comet when we have enough evidence, and 10 on that scale implies the technological be a threat to humanity that comes from the sky, from another civilization. And you mentioned 2 things, so I'd like to separate them. One are objects that are not coming very close to Earth. They are just flying through the inner part of the solar system, and we are tell that they came from outside the solar system because they are too fast and they are not bound by gravity to the sun. These are called interstellar objects, and the first few of them were discovered over the past decade. And we didn't know that they exist before, or we just detected them, new instruments and new computer algorithms that were able to analyze a lot of data. We discovered them only over the past decade. The first one was called Oumuamua because it was this in Hawaii, and that Oumuamua means a scout in the Hawaiian language. And it was really weird because it was tumbling every 8 hours, and the amount of sunlight from it changed by a factor of 10. And that implied that it's most likely pancake-shaped or disc-like. And it was also pushed away from the sun by some mysterious force. And it wasn't behaving like a comet. There was no rocket effect acting on it. There was no gas or dust around it. The question was, what is pushing it? And I suggested that it may be of technological origin. And now we have the third object. The second one was completely natural, definitely a comet of the type that, and it was discovered in 2019. The first one was discovered in 2017. And the third one was just discovered on July 1st. It's called Atlas because it was discovered by a telescope in Chile called Atlas. And what was strange about this one is that it's probably very big. It's tens of kilometers in size, bigger, potentially bigger than Manhattan Island. And if that is its size, its brightness, that means that it's more than 10,000 times massive than the previous ones that we saw. And so that makes it giant. If it's a rock, it's unreasonable that we would see such a giant rock before we see thousands of smaller ones, and this one is the third. And moreover, the trajectory that it moves in is almost perfectly aligned with the plane of the planets around the sun, as if it wanted to come close to these planets. And it will come close to Mars on October 3rd this year, and then Jupiter on March 16th, 2026. And we will be able to take a close-up photograph of it with a high-res camera on the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. There is an orbiter that NASA put out there. There is another orbiter that the European Space Agency put there, and another one the Chinese Space Agency put there. So we get much more data about it from a close-up encounter that it has with Mars. It will pass within 29 million kilometers from Mars. But I asked the question of whether it could of technological origin, because that's exactly what you would do if you wanted to probe the planets in the solar. And we don't know it because we don't have a close-up photograph, and it has some other anomalies that are associated with a type of gas. We see mostly carbon dioxide. We see also nickel without iron. And the only place have nickel without iron is in nickel alloys that are produced industrially, artificially. So that's a potential technological signature of it. And then when it was observed with the Hubble Space Telescope, it featured a very elongated glow ahead of it, not behind it the way comets have. But there was an extent of scattered light. It is 10 times longer than it is wide of the object towards the sun. Usually when we see a cometary tail, it's pointing away from the sun because dust part being pushed by the radiation pressure from the sun. This time we saw with the Hubble Space Telescope something that is some glow of light that is extending with an aspect of 10 to 1. It was 10 times longer towards the sun than it was wide. And there are all kinds of unusual things about this object, especially the trajectory and its size, and waiting for us to get enough data so we can figure it out. Now, the second subject that you mentioned it has to do with objects very, in fact, in the Earth's atmosphere. They're called unidentified anomalous phenomena. And the National Intelligence delivered 3 reports to the US Congress about them, which made the subject very intriguing because, it means that the intelligence agencies are confessing that they're not doing their job. They're supposed to figure out what is in the sky, and they can't do that. They see objects that they cannot identify. When I saw these reports, I decided to establish the Galileo Project that I'm leading right now. We built 3 observatories, and we are watching the sky 24/7, the entire sky in Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and Nevada. And in the next year or so, we'll about a few million objects and analyze them with machine learning software to figure out if there are any outliers that are not human-made or natural. And that's my take on that. Instead of asking stories being told by eyewitnesses in Congress, real or not, which I have a hard time telling, they're talking about experiences they had. They're talking about the government hiding from us information. Until I see this information, I cannot tell whether to trust it. And therefore, I take again the approach of a kid, which is I don't want to listen to stories that in the room are telling me. I just want to figure out the truth, by collecting evidence, data, and that's what the Galileo Project is doing.
Awesome. So I think you had mentioned in your sort of research, Dr. Loeb, that the telemetry of 3I Atlas suggests an intelligence design, and if it was just rocks coming in, it wouldn't be taking a completely different, potential entry into our solar system. So that sort of suggests intelligent design. So with that said, one of the the kind of concerns I have, that a lot of people have concerns, which are trying to understand alien life and the search for alien life, is that, and one of the comments you made in one of your previous interviews was that, the sky should be for all of us to be able to understand and see, is not a matter of secrecy. So at the same time, there's been allegations that a lot of information that you could potentially get access to in terms of data is being redacted, sort of allegations of not just UAPs being redacted, but, deeper into space, that even Voyager, allegations that there's been information redacted from there in terms of alleged contact and stuff like that. So what sort of insight do you have as far as the scientist when there is information being redacted far beyond our planet, which means that it is not a matter of protecting intelligence and what's going on with Russia or China or whatever. It's far beyond our planet. What does that suggest that there's information being concealed about the search for intelligent life that people like yourself should know about and be able to research without that type of censorship?
Yeah, so clearly the government is responsible for national security. So to do with the defense of the United States should be classified so that nations will not take it to their advantage. And I completely accept that. But as a scientist, I'm mostly focused on what lies outside the solar system. Everything produced by humans is boring for me. And the mainstream of the astronomy community is obsessed for microbes, not intelligence. That's a strange thing that one of the highest, the priority actually for a space observatory in the next 2 decades is called the Habitable World Observatory, that would search for the molecular fingerprints of microbes on 25 exoplanets around other stars. I have no problem with that, but if you just imagine have houses on your street, your own house, like those exoplanets that are similar to the Earth-Sun system, you might as well argue that it's very likely that they microbes those houses. But if you find the evidence, it would be very challenging from sitting at your home, looking through the window to figure out that there are microbes in in up the street. That's very difficult. If there is an intelligent resident out there, that resident might come and visit you through the. You might find a tennis ball that was thrown by that resident, or you would see some construction project from a distance that will indicate that there is a resident in one of those houses. So searching for intelligence is something that we should do at least the same level of funding as we are searching for microbes. But at the moment, the mainstream of the astronomy community has not allocated priority to this, similar to the priority in the search for microbes. But coming back to your question, with any information that the government may have, this information that the government has nothing to do with politics on Earth, nothing to do with national security, nothing to do with countries that are in adversarial nations, but it has to do with what lies outside the solar system. This information should be shared with scientists like myself or with the public, because we are all in the same boat. If there are aliens, they don't care about how land on this rock that we were born on. It's a tiny rock. There is much more real estate and why would they care about different nations? So, in science, scientific information is supposed to be shared. I can, in principle, go to every country in the world and meet with colleagues work on astronomy and talk with them freely about what we are doing. And that's an amazing science that, it's a human experience, has nothing to do with politics, has nothing to do with the way we split into nations. All humans could benefit from it. All humans should be involved because it reflects curiosity and our ignorance. We're trying to learn about, and whether we deny it or not, whether we hide it or not, our neighbors will still be there. Existence of our neighbors do not depend on whether the government hides the data. The existence of our neighbors do not depend on what people media. So it's a bit narrow-minded to hold information away from scientists or from the public for some political narrative. So I don't know if the government has data on this thing, but if they do have it, I hope that sometime in the future they will share it with scientists like myself, and eventually we'll get to the bottom of the question of, are we alone, or we have a partner out there in space? And it's the most romantic question in science. Are we alone? And when Enrico Fermi, the physicist, asked the question, where is everybody? Next to him, he asked it in 1950, before I was born, but if I was next to him, I would have said that, Enrico, this is a question that every lonely person asks. Where is everybody? And what you tell a person is, don't be so presumptuous. You are not that attractive. Your partner will not come to you. You have to search for the partner. At the very least, you should look through the windows of your home and see if you can find a partner. And Enrico Fermi did not build a telescope, didn't search. My point is, we have been for a phone call. We've been looking for radio signals for 60 years, but that's just like waiting for a phone call. Nobody may call you from your street. Completely different approach is to go back to your backyard and see if there are any tennis balls that were thrown by a neighbor, mailbox, to see if there is any package there. And it's a completely different approach. And it was not practiced till we started discovering those interstellar objects, and now we have also the anomalous phenomena. So there is an opportunity here to learn something new.
Yeah, definitely. With that said, Dr. Loeb, one of the I've seen allegations online about ranging from, one allegation was that that NASA allegedly made some sort of contact with this 3i Atlas, that there was some sort of communications, and alleged allegations that whatever entity associated with 3i Atlas indicated that they're a part of some race that's been in contact with humanity.
I'm not aware of that. As far as I know, there was no such occasion, but Maybe someone else knows more. I'm not aware of that.
Are the lights that there? And I also heard allegations that the lights were potentially artificial, or is that still being
I mean,
discussed by
that
you?
relates to what I mentioned before about the glow of scattered
Mhm,
light in front of
mhm,
the object towards the sun rather than the way that the pale look like. They
mhm.
they are stretched away from the sun because they are composed of dust particles that are pushed by the solar radiation behind. However, for 3i Atlas, what we see is a cone of scattered light. We see of the image of scattered light, a glow in front of the object that is 10 times long is wide. That's we don't fully understand it, but I wrote a paper explaining it as a natural phenomenon, but we don't fully understand why do we see it first time. We've never seen it for comets. Why do we see it for the first time in the context of 3i Atlas?
So, with that said as well, Dr. Lowe, when Voyager back in the 70s was originally sort of being sent out in space with all this sort of information about what humanity was about, definitely I was, you know, one of the concerns I had at the time was, why would scientists send out information, all this information about humanity, not knowing what type of entities it might potentially get in contact with. With that said, Dr. Hawkins one time had mentioned about, like Dr. Hawkins about, the threat of humanity by advanced extraterrestrials. So when scientists are sort of, doing things and trying to search for alien life, does it, think about the potential that that type of approach might run into a hostile
Yeah.
entity of some kind?
Definitely, because when you go on a blind date, you never know who will sit aside, and that may be someone with a very friendly approach, but it could also be a serial killer. Who knows? Knows? It's,
Mhm.
on a blind date, and this is a blind date of interstellar proportions. We just don't know what kind of aliens are out there, and Stephen Hawking indeed warned us that we were transmitting radio signals for more than a century now. And so if there is someone within 100 light years from us, they know that we exist, careless, and we announce our existence. There is this dark forest hypothesis as a solution to Enrico Fermi's question, where is everybody? So one possible solution is that there are aliens not very from us, but they are silent, worried about predators. Those that were very vocal, were now, and so it's a matter of survival. Those that remain and we obviously were very vocal. And one day, if they see us as a threat, we might be visited. So that's why we should be careful. And I agree with you. Now, the other thing about the golden record that was sent with the Voyager spacecraft, included music, and Frank, I'm not very proud of the music from the 60s. I like today's music much more. That was supposed to represent humanity, class music. They had a picture of a woman, all kinds of, as if humanity was bragging about its accomplishment, which is a bit ridiculous. If that civilization that looks at it had a billion years of science and technology, not 1 century. We just had 1 century of modern science since quartz was discovered. Very fundamental discovery, but only a century since then. If they billion years, we would look like ants sidewalk when you walk down the street. We wouldn't be very much appreciated, or they wouldn't about us because they are much more capable technologically or scientifically. So for us to brag about what we did is a little bit childish. It shows a sense of arrogance. It shows that we are not intelligent, frankly. And one we are not perhaps being visited very often is because they look at us and say, well, they are not worth our attention.
So, with that said, Dr. Loeb, One of the one of the critical motivations of our show today is to get your insight on to what extent, if any, you think that we as humans who would look at the data that you have, to what extent we should regard Three-Eye Atlas as being a non-threat or a critical threat or potential threat, or because there's a lot of discrepant information out there. Some representatives saying, oh, Three-Eye Atlas is going to the sun. Some say to Mars. Some say it's coming quite close to Earth or going to potentially collide in there. So much. So what is your insight in terms of the potential threat of it?
So first, I recommend subscribing to the updates that I put on medium.com. Every day or two, I put an update on everything we know about Three-Eye Atlas. I did that for the last 2.5 months. There were a few million people following me. So anyone can join. Subscription doesn't cost anything. It's free. The latest that I wrote actually this morning and yesterday suggests that there are 5 anomalies about Atlas that are quite unusual relative to comets or asteroids that we are familiar with. And it's possible that the rock of a type that we've never seen before, of course. But you still need to explain why there is a chance of 1 in 500 that this rock would be on a trajectory is aligned with the planets around the sun. Why would it choose that? Because the previous ones came at a large angle. And so I still rank it at this time as 4 on the lobes that I mentioned before, where 0 is natural as a technological threat. And 4 is pretty high, because if you imagine going on, cross street, and then there is a car, 40% chance of hitting you. You better keep your eyes on that car. And so it will come. Three-Eye Atlas will come closest to the sun on October 29th. And as it comes closer to the sun, it will get brighter and bigger on the sky. So we'll have an opportunity, for example, to image it when it comes close to Mars, and then tell it looks like a natural comet or something else. So my recommendation is to keep our eyes on the ball, the way that the basketball coaches tell their team, keep your eyes on the ball, not on the audience. It's not about social media. It's not about getting likes, Now, scientific community prefers, the comet experts simply say it's a comet. But it's whatever it is, And to me, the evidence shows that this is anomalous, and nobody can argue that it's not following a trajectory aligned with the planets. We know that. Nobody can argue that it's very bright, so it means it may have size. For example, this morning in the essay that I posted on medium.com, I showed some data that came from the Zwicky transient facility camera, and it shows that the size, the effective area of the object change in time during the month of May, and then it started rising. And I said, well, that shows actually that it started to mass or show some glow around it around June, and then the activity started. But before that, we could see probably just the bare object. And if that's the case, the size is 15 kilometers, very similar to Manhattan Island. And that is not the interpretation that you can in the paper that reported about the data. They said, oh, look, there is a change, no evolution in the effective of the object during between May 15 and June 1st. But we don't fully understand. But after that, we can see that there was some increase in the brightening. So it's just a comet. That's the way they interpret things. So I say, no, let's look at the flat part where it didn't evolve. and that implies an enormous size. They assumed that it's only a few kilometers in size, and I show that it should be 15 kilometers in size. So that's the problem with sometimes, the scientific data come out, but the interpretation tries to shove all the anomalies under the carpet of traditional thinking. So you have to be careful in belief the scientists are concluding, because they a reason to try and say there is nothing really new about it. Just to give an example, Mua, the first interstellar object, now the mainstream of the comet experts argues that it's a dark comet, meaning it's a comet where we cannot see the cometary tail. And so it's just like looking at an elephant saying the elephant is the zebra with stripes. No, it's a completely different animal. And so there is some cheat here that the experts are trying to class as something familiar. Just by calling it, they say it's a dark comet where you can't see the comet. And I feel like a kid in Hans Christian Andersen's tale that said the emperor has no clothes. No, and the adults in the room are telling me, no, has clothes. You just can't see them.
With that said, Dr. Loeb, one of the things which I want to deal with before our program is over is just explore the possibility of of alien life, that this could be an alien technology. One of the things I wanted to compare, since we talked about Voyager, is that when we sent out Voyager with all that sort of information, I think the human intent was to convey a sense that we are peaceful beings, that our contact in Voyager is a friendly effort to explore the universe. Is not a hostile military reconnaissance mission. And if we compare that, and if we start to assume the possibility that this could be an alien life and that an alien technological apparatus, if it's not sort of brought, unless there's information we're not being provided with, if this is simply a silent advanced technology apparatus, is it possible that its purpose might not be as benign as our Voyager? It might be a hostile reconnaissance mission?
Yeah, definitely. We are all familiar with the story about the Trojan horse, where the thought that it's a gift that is very, very friendly, and it ended containing soldiers inside of it. And so we should be, any blind date is a dialogue. My advice on blind dates in general is observe the other side before you speak, because you shouldn't until you realize what the intent of the other side is. When you have a visitor to your backyard, you should be cautious, because the visitor might enter through the front door on a very shell. It's not like getting a signal from thousands of light years away, where you have the leisure of waiting and deciding over time what to do. Here, you have to act promptly. And I ended establishing, if once we get this wake-up call, if there is indeed a visit by alienology, I think everything will change in our future. And not only it will change the perspective we have about our place in the universe, it will teach us a sense of modesty, because someone else might be more than we are. But it will also imply some international security threat, and we will have to have international organization that includes policymakers, includes scientists that help them figure out what the data means, what the information is, and psychologists that discuss how to convey the information to the public, creating panic. And I believe that it would lead to investing a significant fraction of the budget that we allocate to military purposes, $2.4 trillion a year. We might allocate that to space exploration, put some interceptors, some sensor in the outer parts of the solar system to warn the Earth from any approaching technological threat.
Awesome. And just one little, the show's almost over. I wanted to get your insight in terms of, there's some sort of scientists through quantum mechanics which speculate about the potential that in extra dimensions, even beyond in our own dimension, beyond our own ability to sense and see things, that there may be, for example, entities that could be cohabiting where we are, but we just can't see them. For example, cats have eyes that can see things more than humans and dogs. So we have about 3 minutes left. Do you have any sort of insights on
Yeah,
that and sort of
yeah. So
extradimensionality?
I would, we basically don't know what most of the matter in the universe is. We call it dark matter, as I mentioned. What most of the energy in the universe is, we call it dark energy because it's invisible. And it's quite possible there is physics that we don't fully understand, that some alien civilization with a more advanced science is using, engineering, building things that are taking advantage of substances we have no idea about. It's quite possible, and that therefore for us it's difficult to detect them, understand them, because they're using very different for communication, very different means for propulsion and things like that. But with respect to extra dimensions, it's possible that there are extra dimensions, but we don't know that it's the case. We've never detected any evidence that indicates that there is more than three dimensions, spatial dimension, plus time. And until such evidence in an experiment or in observations, I would regard it as speculative. It's just like many other. Reality can be many things. We know that when you go to the bank to check how much money you have in your account, you could have $1 billion, you can have $1 trillion, have $1,000, or you can have a deficit. Everything is possible. There are an enormous possibilities, but the question is, what do you actually have? And as scientists, we can think reality can have extra dimensions, can have all kinds of things. The question is, what does it actually have? And if we don't have evidence that dimensions, I don't want to regard it as anything other than speculative at this.
Awesome. So you don't want to exceed information. You just want to deal with the data that you get and not
Yes.
sort of speculate on that.
Exactly. For that reason, I don't like science fiction, because very often the storyline violates the laws of physics as we know them. So I'm using what we know to search for alien technology. And the way I would find it is not by imagining that it's extra dimension or something else. It is by seeing that it's an outlier, that it's unfamiliar. There is an object that behaves in ways that we cannot really understand as natural. Once I see that, I will try to study it and figure out what it means. But I don't want to imagine in advance what it might mean, because that may be a mistake. We need to rely on evidence to guide us. And the way to search for technology is to look for the unknown, to look for something that is not familiar.
Awesome. So thank you very much, Dr. Loeb. We'll be putting links below the video so that people who are concerned about 3i Atlas can continue through your Medium blog to keep track of what's going on so that they can get the factual information out there in a sea of potential misinformation out there. They'll be able to keep track of it, because that's our intent today, to, definitely inform, to provide information which is critical potentially to humanity, and we definitely respect you as a beacon of light in a sea of static and noise that can clarify an important development in astrophysics as far as 3i Atlas. So we are tremendously grateful for you, Dr. Loeb, to taking your time to share us your critical insights and knowledge, so that we as humans out there who are concerned about this can at least feel easy, not easy, but feel a sense of ease at someone of your stature is sort of keeping us informed, and without the politics involved in the whole analysis that other times clouds the type of quality information that we get. So thank you very much, Dr. Loeb, for coming to us today and sharing your wonderful knowledge. And we thank you for your time today, Dr. Loeb, by the Etiquette Show.
Having me, it was a real pleasure.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. And this is another edition of the Etiquette Show, and we had Dr. Loeb today, an illustrious guest, and we look forward to anybody who wants to make comments below or to follow his blog. And if you want to keep track of the latest developments of 3i Atlas, just check out the link below and you'll get the great information and critical information about what's the latest on 3i Atlas. So thank you very much again for everybody for watching.